So it's fascinating to see if Lyon consider him to be a big threat, or if their focus is going to be taking maybe Diamond off some of his comfort picks.
All right, let's see how we go into Champion Select now. Lucian and Galio banned away by Gambit. Lyon taking Sejuani and Cassiopeia off the table. Alistair, the final ban from Gambit here up against Lyon. I want to see specifically how Gambit deals with Lyon after seeing what they did in game number 1. Is there anything they want to adapt to outside of the strategy they may have had planned? Are they going to specifically play around certain things? And for the 3rd game in a row, Vedius, Xayah is the first pick.
Well, it's interesting though, because Tristana is still left open along with the Rakan, and if Lyon decided to go for that, it would not be a bad bottom lane to go for, but they prioritized the Maokai before. They went for a very early Braum and Maokai, and it feels like that's just a comfort pick for Lyon, having that reliable, tanky front line that Giral can just sit and just soak up a lot of the damage on. So they could look to round things out now with the support. They don't need to lock in that early AD carry, but they run the risk of giving away the Xayah Rakan, which, if we go back to game 2 of the day, is pretty lethal.
All right, with Maokai locked in for Lyon, they've got one more pick to make. They hover Wukong forever just to give fans a little bit of a, I don't know, a little bit of a tease, a little bit of a meme to see if they would lock that one in, but they will not take the Braum instead. Now,
bear in mind, Jarvan is still left available, given that Lyon decided to prioritize the Maokai rather than solidifying that kind of strong, engaged, playmaking top laner along with the Gragas. Even after the recent nerfs, teams still find a lot of value in what he brings in the jungle. They think that he is still the most well-rounded, and Gambit, they're going to get themselves a very solid early draft. They have a solid bot lane, they have a well-rounded jungler, everything looking pretty meta in the favor of Gambit right now.
Yep, looks pretty solid for these guys. We'll have to see how Lyon responds with their last pick before the 2nd round of bans come through. Granted, they are on the red side, so after those 2nd bans happen, they will get the 1st pick, and they'll go ahead and solidify their own bottom lane with the Tristana.
Now again, Jarvan still left available. Feel like Lyon need to consider taking away the Gnar, or maybe even the Camille away from the side of Gambit. But you've also got to bear in mind the fact that this Gragas might be top lane. The thing is, during the finals, Stasios, he actually played the Gragas a fair amount. I believe he played it in 2 or maybe even 3 of the games during that final. And the thing about him is he is this big playmaker alongside Edward. And Gragas, in the hands of a top laner, is surprisingly effective at catching you off guard and just making plays happen where you least expect it.
And Lyon is prepared for Gambit Esports' potential plan here. You can see that even though the Gragas is locked in, they banned the Kayn away anyway, thinking, you know, maybe that Gragas is going to go top. Maybe this is the stay host pick, and we want to keep the Kayn away from Diamond procs. They'll ban that one out for themselves. Syndra banned out by Gambit. Going to keep Seiya off of that one. Could have potentially seen what Lyon did with that in game number 1 against Team WE, not dying until the very end of the game. Do not want that happening here up against them. Especially because for both these teams, Vedius, remember that every group has 3 teams in it, one of which is one of those Pool 1 teams that everyone is sort of expecting to be dominant. The other 2 are much more closely matched in the eyes of many fans. So if you're up in a game like this, where it's the Pool 2 versus the Pool 3, this game really matters. Because if you're expecting WE to take first in this group, remember that first and second move on, one of these 2 teams will then get that 2nd place, and you need to directly beat the other person competing for it to earn that spot.
Yep, and remember that left for today, I do believe that Gambit and WE will still play in game 5 of the day. So Lyon, this will be their final game of the day, and they're going to lock themselves in a bit of a carry top laner themselves. One of the big things I was very excited to see coming into the tournament overall was Jace. I feel like that over in the East, teams like China and Korea, or teams from China and Korea rather, seem to have a much better understanding of how to utilize Jace and how to set him up for success. But we're yet to see it so much in the West. And Lyon is going to be a team that demonstrates that while Seiya and White Lotus can be carries, we can also rely on Giral to be that threat, unless this Jace is in fact in the middle lane.
We'll have to see how they decide to position him exactly, because Gambit has selected Ryze and Camille as their 2 solo laners, meaning that we will be seeing the Gragas there in the jungle.
So this is what we were talking about earlier. There was the threat of the playmaking top laner, Camille, going in favor of Stasios. And the thing about Ryze is another one of those champions that has had a small buff on the most recent patch. The W ratio has had a pretty significant buff going from 0.2 to 0.6. And some people have talked about going for the Abyssal Mask style of build now, rather than the old conventional Rod of Ages, like we see on Cassiopeia, as Lyon, they do in fact round things out with a carry top laner.
All right, it's not the carry top laner that we were potentially thinking it was, though. It is going to be Jace in the mid lane with Jax in the top lane.
Wow. Okay. Now this is very fascinating. Lyon, a little bit lacking in terms of magic damage. They do have a Maokai. And
Jax is hybrid.
He does, yeah, he's hybrid. I agree. But they have no real burst magic damage threat.
Right.
What they definitely have is a 1-3-1 comp building for themselves. Whereas Gambit, they have the option for the 1-3-1, 1-4, but their team fighting is arguably a little bit stronger because of the value Ryze can have in team fights, along with the amount of utility that Camille can bring with things like her E and also the zone that she brings from her ultimate. So I give the team fight advantage slightly in favor of Gambit, but when I'm looking at the two differences is Gambit, again, have a lot of engage. Like we saw from Cloud9, Rakan, Gragas naturally offer that means to just reliably start fights. Whereas from the side of Lyon, they're taking more of the defensive approach, one again, going for an early Braum, using the Jax split push. Maybe you can use them as a flank, but they have no easy way to start a fight. So they need Gambit to be the initiators if they're the ones, if Lyon want to be able to challenge for these objectives.
And you talked about it, Vedius. Gambit likes to roam. This team, you can see all sorts of surprises coming out, especially from a guy like Edward. Long storied history with this guy going all the way back to Moscow 5, a name from a very long time ago. A lot of fans probably not even familiar with who they are, but for many that have been around since the beginning of League of Legends esports, they know all about exactly who this guy used to be, the Thresh Prince.
As a European fan, it is a pleasure to see the return of some of the Moscow 5 players. Back in the day, they were part of the legacy core, you know, of Fnatic, Moscow 5, CLG EU, SK. There are a lot of well-known organizations back in the original birth of Europe as a region, and it was Diamond Prox that was one of the big innovators. He was the guy that introduced counter jungling.
Right.
It was Moscow 5. Yeah, exactly. They were the ones that were 3-buffing people, and everyone was like, what the hell? They would give their top lane Gangplank a blue buff. They would steal the they would do the enemy red and their own red on a Shyvana because she doesn't need mana. And it was all kinds of creative and innovative new strategies. And now Diamond Proxy's back. He's a legacy player. He went from EU, where he didn't have the greatest success, towards the Russian League. And even in the Russian League, he did not have that same level of success either. He has been struggling. Now, for many years, he is back on the international stage. And you have to remember that when you think back to how many pros are still around from 2012,
not many.
It's exactly not that many. So the guy, he's been trying to keep his skill up. He's been trying to stay relevant to a lot of the young players that come onto the scene. And when you think of young players, it's very easy to just look at this Lyon lineup and see how well Diamond Prox, a very old legacy player, will stack up against some of this young individual talent.
And I mean, you've got Diamond Prox and Edward, these two guys from away back with Moscow 5. Last Worlds appearance, 2012 for that team. Now they're back here, Gambit, trying to make an impact on the play-in stage. But you've also got Kira and PvP Stay Host, and these are names for people who watched Albus Nox Luna in Worlds 2016. These guys had a hell of a showing of their own.
Oh, they certainly did. Albus Nox Luna getting a win over the Rocks Tigers in the group stages and upsetting both CLG and G2, coming off to being able to make it out of the groups and go to the quarterfinals. So they were exciting players to watch. It's now exciting to see how they've grown as early level 2 from the Lyon bottom lane.
And White Lotus jumps right into the mix now. Going to be knocked up into the air by Edward, but not before grabbing some good damage onto Blasting. Gambit Esports bottom lane going to be on the back foot for now, up against this Lyon superstar 80 carry, the guy that we saw not die until the very final team fight in their match up against Team WE.
And we have talked a lot about Gambit and how it's exciting to see them back on the stage, but we've already seen Lyon play once today, and as a team, they definitely impressed. They held their own against WE. They showed their mechanical prowess and their ability to go toe-to-toe against one of the best Chinese team fighting teams. And now we get to see how they will hold up against Gambit, because they've drafted a bit of a different composition this time around. Again, they do have the 1-3-1, but you still have so much carry potential, but now from even more players. Giral on the Jax going up against the Camille. Feels like they were kind of expecting it, as it is a bit of a counter pick in its ability to just freely farm during the laning phase. And we'll see how well they can set up this 1-1, because it is a much harder strategy to be able to execute, especially when you look at Lyon and you feel like their team fighting is just so good.
And for Lyon Gaming, we mentioned a little bit in Champion Select how when you're not one of the Pool 1 teams in the group, you really want to make sure that you're trying as hard as you absolutely can to beat the other non-Pool 1 team. If these guys lose this game, they'll start day 1 off at a 0-2 record, which is absolutely not where you want to be, especially considering you're only going to be playing 4 games. That means the best you can do is break even. Lyon really needs to win this game if they want to look strong heading into the second day.
And remember, these teams, they only play 4 games in groups.
Right.
They're about 50% way through their group, Captain Flowers.
Like I say the second day, but I could also say the last day of play-in groups, and it would mean the same thing. It's a very short phase, a lot shorter than a lot of these teams are normally used to competing in, and it means that each individual game does have that much more value placed upon its outcome, and a lot more consequence if you do drop it. So expect these guys to be aware of that.
For sure, and we talked a lot about like the big picture and the outside and some of the cool players that we have competing. But now we need to focus in on some of the game and how things are playing out, because in terms of mid lane, nice pressure being put out by Seiya and good support there from Oddie as well, enabling his mid laner to have this bit of a pressure advantage. And we haven't seen Jace mid in a while. I think it actually is one of the good answers to Ryze. I think that he can trade pretty effectively. You can itemize early magic resistance, but also you're allowed to run TP in the middle lane so that you can answer if the Ryze decides to go off onto a side lane. But speaking of Ryze, he's one of those players that has so many creative uses with his ultimate about how you can punish teams if they're in a poor position, and you can go for that sneaky rush of a Baron or a Dragon, or maybe even set up for that multi-man roam down to one of the side lanes.
Ryze's ultimate is one of those things that you either see a really useless use of it, or you see some really cool game-breaking, play-making type of moment out of the thing, and it's just got such this super far up or super far down nature to it. I will be interested to see how that ultimate is utilized as the game goes on. Remember, I also want to point out the fact that you mentioned it in Champion Select Vegas. The magic damage is a bit lacking on the side of Lyon, but now they're looking to go in onto Blasting and Edward here in the bottom side. They do manage to find the stun onto Blasting. Flash into the Twisted Advance, still looking to find the play, and they've got the damage thanks to Audie. First blood for Lyon.
Audie is able to get the first kill, setting up for his superstar bottom lane. White Lotus doesn't get the kill, but it's still a kill over in favor of Lyon. They finally get that early game lead, but now Diamond, he's looking to try and answer in the top lane.
Giral and PvP stay hosts. Giral really wants to shove this in if he can, does not want to allow that lane to freeze where it is, but Diamond Procs looking to make this punish. Counter-Strike going to be buying Giral a little bit of extra time. Flash into the flash with the body slam. Diamond Proc still staying on top of Giral here, but the ward into the leap strike, very useful tool for Jax to be able to jump away to those wards, have an extra escape mechanism.
So before we talk about the top lane, we've got to come back to the bot. White Lotus and Genthix, it's not the easiest bottom lane to set up, but it's because Genthix is able to land that first hit of the passive. They get that 4-hit stun. Blasting does not respect Flash early enough, allowing Audie to get close enough to then land the Twisted Advance, which follows him underneath the turret, but it doesn't matter because he's full health, he has the Courage of the Colossus proc, and he has his bottom lane to help dish out the damage in order to get them that kill. And while Diamond tried to answer in the top lane, they just did not have the damage or the collapse in order to get the kill onto Giral. So Lyon are now starting to build an advantage on one side of the map, while Giral, even though he's at a slight deficit, he's still going even with this Camille.
Right, I do want to point out the fact that you do see farm advantages for both PvP stay hosts and Blasting in their respective side lanes, while mid lane, it's Seiya who's got the edge over Kira's Ryze for the time being. Jungle pretty similar between these two. You can't base a lot off of jungle CS counts anyway, since the camps have so much different value between them. 1 Gromp in a camp, 10 Krugs in a camp makes it not exactly add up to be the most even depending on what they took. Diamond Proc's now moving onto his own red buff. Have some extra ganking power there on that Gragas. Explosive Cask up. You've also got the Maokai Nature's Grasp ready to go. Both of these are massive tools for making plays happen, Benny.
Oh, they certainly are. And with Infernal Drake on the board, you would expect both these teams to try and set up around it. But remember, you have 2 split pushing top laners. You don't really want to try and force big fights in the early game because there's a really big risk of that top lane 1v1 being swung if either of them are happy to get very quick kills in a few of these early fights. So just keeping them in the top lane, keeping them farming, have the potential for setting up a gank and then maybe transition into a Rift Herald is the ideal setup in the top side of the map.
Blasting and Edward still just keeping things relatively even down here in the bottom side. Lane pretty much stuck there, dead center. Playmaking possibilities available for either side, but Diamond Prox just clearing up the Scuttle Crab in the top part of the river for now. All right, Blade Caller's not going to find anybody.
Now, one of the narratives we initially set up at the start of this was Gambit like to roam and skirmish. Speaking of skirmishing
right now, Blasting nearly going to be stunned up by the Winter's Bite, instead finding some good damage back onto White Lotus, making that somewhat even, but still in the losing end of it for now.
Right, but going back to that point, one of the key facilitators of that roaming playstyle is Edward. And when you play a champion like Rakan, he's really good at roaming. Naturally, he's great at transitioning into the mid lane, into the top lane. He has so many options. What we see from the build path is Edward is actually prioritizing on playing towards the lane. I feel like he's going towards the Ardent Sensor. It's very easy to proc onto, especially a Xayah when you are the Rakan, because of the extra long range you get on the E. But he's not gone for early boots. He's not gone for that early kind of mobility playstyle that we see often from his Tahm Kench and his Thresh. Now, it's still relatively early in the game, but it does surprise me that his focus has shifted into trying to make sure that Blasting has the best possible laning phase rather than trying to snowball maybe Kira or Stasios in this early game.
All right, Cinder Hulks completed onto both junglers, by the way, so that tankiness is going to be starting to multiply as they buy more health items as the game continues. You can see a little bit of a difference in philosophy between the top laners as well. Trinity Force Rush coming out for Giral, while PvP Stayhost wanted to go for the Ninja Tabbies first and foremost, reduce some of Jax's damage power against him, and then opt into his own Trinity Force components. We know both of these champions excel with that item. But of course, with Giral completing it first, that will be a nice power window for him to potentially utilize. TP is up on both of these top laners. First Drake is Infernal Vedius, and that can sometimes cause fights that wouldn't otherwise happen if one of these teams really wants to get brave and try to make a play happen on it.
Yep. And so far, things nice and close. Not quite as early game dominant as W had in game 1, and same for Cloud9 in game 2. Laning phase still very even, just with the slight exception of that early kill going in favor of Lyon. I think that's fine for both sides. This meta is very much about scaling. But now we do look at the roam from Stasios down into the middle lane. This could be a play setup from Gambit.
Great steal away on those Raptors from Diamond Proc into the amazing setup mid to potentially take down Xayah, but he gets away. Barely keeping himself alive as Blasting's going to be stunned up here in the bottom lane. The Glacial Fissure knocking him up into the air, trying to get away with the Feather Storm. The explosive charge, just one hit off.
That was awesome, Captain Cloud. So much cool stuff just happened. So, we talked about the roaming. We saw it from Stasios just there. He pushed up mid, pushed up top rather, roamed down to mid, and he gets a great ultimate onto Xayah. We might be Stasios.
Giral may have just found himself the solo kill on a PvP stage.
And that comes back from the flash that Stasios used in the middle lane after the play that Gambit just tried to set up. This game
Lyon.
just suddenly swung open.
That's Lyon with a 2-0 lead and an Infernal Drake grab for themselves. You saw Giral also time the stun and the counter-strike specifically to interrupt the hook shot from Stayhost. Awesome job.
Oh man, that was a great sequence of events. So, in the middle lane, Diamond Prox, I don't know if he was expecting to get that good of an ultimate off, but the moment he did, straight follow-up from Kira with the binding on the W, and also you had the E coming from Stasios along with the ulti. It was fortunate the Oddie was there to provide support, because then Xayah could flash out and he gets away with his life. Meanwhile, in the bottom lane, White Lotus and Genthix are like, oh, they're having a party up mid. We don't want to be left out, so let's make our own party happen. They force an engagement down in the 2 versus 2. They actually come out ahead against the classic Xayah Rakan combo. And they're so close to killing Blasting, who saves his ultimate right till the very end to avoid that last bit of burst damage so that he ends up walking away with his life. But because the bottom lane was forced back, it allowed the Dragon to be an open window, and Stasios also ended up dying, so there was no TP threat coming out from the top laner. So even though no one died in the initial set of plays, the pressure that was gained enabled Lyon to then turn that into a bunch of objectives around the map.
Lyon now with a nearly 1,000 gold lead for themselves, 2 kills up with that Infernal Drake in the pocket, and the next Drake will be yet another Infernal, Vedius. So expect the tempo of this game to not get any slower as we move forward here, closer and closer into the mid-game. Stayhost jumping in here onto Giral, issuing that Hextech ultimatum to keep him in place as Diamond Proc shows up as well, finding the cask. Oh, a disastrous ultimate.
Here comes Brawl.
Actually knocking Giral away to safety, and now Diamond Proc's gonna be the one who's caught out here. Gentix sending out the Glacial Fissure as Seiya grabs the kill with the Shock Blast. Not the execution that Gambit needed.
And this is Gambit sticking to their style. They're trying to force skirmishes. They're trying to roam around the map. They moved Kira up into the top lane, and they used his ulti to come down mid, but then Lyon were ready and waiting. They didn't even have vision in the river. They either had a feeling or they were in the right place at the right time, but regardless, they turned it around in their favor. Gentix was also able to roam up, and right now they're 3-0 over Gambit. Remember, expectations by many of the fans were that this is the return of Gambit. They're going to be the second seed in this group. And right now, it is Lyon, after a great performance in Game 1 against WE, that are having another great performance up against this Gambit squad.
They beat Gambit to the punch in terms of grabbing the first turret. Blasting and Edward trying to make sure they even that one up by grabbing this one here in the top side. They will have to wait for this next minion wave to do so. But considering Lyon already got the bonus for the first one, it's still going to be a gain for them. Lyon, we're seeing so far, Vedius, this was not just a fluke in game number 1. It wasn't just a good showing and the team's actually not that great. They're still doing the same kind of things they were doing in game number 1 against WE here against Gambit.
Yeah, and I feel like they just feel more confident now. It's almost like after that loss to WE, they have that sense of, we can do this. You know, we can make it out of groups. We can bring it to the best of them. And WE, we heard in the interview from Mystic afterwards saying, that was a hard game. You know, like, they made us work for that win. And right now, Lyon are putting the pressure onto Gambit. And again, just look at where the gold is right now for Lyon. You've got a 1-0-1 Jax in the top lane. You've got a 1-0-0 Jace in the mid. And while White Lotus doesn't have any kills, he's well on track to completing his very early static shift too, which is going to give him a pretty significant power spike. And that on center from Edward still yet to be completed.
Yeah, 16 minutes into the game will be a bit slow for the Ardent Sensor. You will definitely need to get that up and running as soon as possible for this team to really have a chance in these fights, especially considering, like we talked about, that Infernal Drake going over to a team that has the likes of a Jax in the top lane, and you've got the Jace and the Tristana. There's a lot of damage there to be multiplied by that bonus. Next one will be coming up here in about 2 minutes.
Uh-oh.
Gold lead for Lyon. Might turn into a play here in the top side. Maokai ulti coming in, probably going to force the ulti away from blasting, tries to flash out, Twisted Advance is right there. There's your follow-up with Winner's Bite, and ain't even a thing. White Lotus grabbing himself kill number 1.
You know the expression, 2 birds with 1 stone? I feel like they should rename it to 1 bird giant tree, and you end up with a free 300 gold and an easy access to the Rift-powered Lyon.
I don't know if that flows off the tongue so
I don't know, I think it's kind of smooth, but they're now setting themselves up for taking that tier 1 in the top lane, or maybe even the tier 1 in the mid. But Lyon, they're keeping their tempo in their favor.
Lyon now moving on to the Rift Herald. 3 men strong. I mean, you can't even really contest this if you're Gambit because you don't have your 80 carry nearby. He's just now respawning back in the base. Kira trying to shove up mid lane, at least gain some tempo there. Maybe grab a couple of auto attacks onto the turret. Not even going to bother. Seiya rotates himself back over with his blue buff and flashes away. Edward not able to find the setup.
So that could very well have been a result of the slight nerfs to the hitbox that Rakan's ultimate had, because that was very close and you'd expect that to hit, but it was just out of range. The knockup would have landed, but the taunt in fact missed, which means that Seiya was able to get a very swift flash away and he doesn't end up losing his life. So good quick response there from Seiya to avoid death.
Infernal Drake number 2 just 20 seconds away as Lyon sits with a 4-0 lead, as well as 2k gold above their opponents. Teleports available on both top laners. Also available for Seiya, should he need to use that to get into position here. Kira doesn't have a teleport of his own to follow suit, but he does have both summoner spells also up and waiting on himself. Honestly, the only real summoner spell down on the side of Gambit Esports right now is that flash for blasting, but that could be really big in this fight, quite honestly. Same can be said for Seiya's flash over on the side of Lyon. Stayhost and Jural into that 1v1 now. Stayhost jumping in. Hextech ultimatum going to be issued. Jural immediately canceling that one out as Diamond Proc shows up to make this fight a little bit less fair. But Audi also waiting in the wings will get his top laner out.
But now that's Gragas ultimate and Camille ultimate both gone as the Infernal Drake has just spawned. Lyon, they should have no fear of Gambit trying to contest this because with two big ultimates unavailable, it's very unlikely that Gambit would win the fight.
And that's going to be exactly how it goes. They managed to secure Infernal Drake number 2 for themselves. Going to be that much more damage for Lyon. The next Drake is Cloud, so not as much priority on that one as there would be if it were to be Infernal number 3.
Whoa. You can't make a fire burn brighter without a bit of oxygen, Captain Flowers.
This isn't science class. Everybody likes to see the third Infernal Drake, especially when you're ahead like Lyon is right now. 1,500 gold up, 19 minutes into the game. Baron is going to be on the table here soon, and once it is, we might see some potential crazy plays coming out. We know Gambit is a team that likes to be playmakers. We know they're a team that also likes to make very decisive Baron calls.
Oh, for sure. That is an excellent point, Captain Flowers, and something we were talking about coming into this game. Gambit, when they see a Baron, they're like, I think we can take this. And they don't really think that much around the outside, not really about the setup. They just go, I see an objective. At the very least, we can force a fight. And they'll use that to just make plays around the map. And it's a very tense situation if you're a Gambit fan when you watch them playing around that Baron. But when they're this far behind, I don't know if they can really run that risk, especially when you're still fine in terms of scaling. You have a Ryze, you have a Xayah, and your team fighting overall should still be stronger than that of the Lions composition because Jason Jax not really known for their team fighting prowess.
Right, but we do see Jural constantly set up in this split push situation, doing exactly what a Jax wants to be doing, creating that 1 versus 1 threat consistently. Team add up for him means he's also going to have more split pushing power, and we'll likely see him evolving that into the Titanic Hydra as time goes on. Pretty much the Korean build that has come into popularity with Jax this season. Audi getting himself away from Kira there. Blue buff Ryze, not really somebody you want to be 1v1ing as a Maokai. We'll throw down the sapling, provide a little bit of extra slowdown time onto Kira there as Staya pressures on the top lane. Tier 1 now going to be looking to go after Kira. Knocks him out of his own ultimate. Very nicely done. There comes your Nature's Grasp. The shield from Kira not going to be enough, and Staya grabs the kill.
Kira, he really should have been able to read that play. When you have 3 members of your own team being pushed underneath your tier 2 tower, and Audi was already making his way up the river, you just have to abandon that tower. Realize that Lyon's clear goal is to take that objective down, but instead he stuck around. He used his flash and cleanse and still lost his life. Lyon now have full control over the map. There are no outer towers left for them to deal with, and Baron starts to become a big objective that they look to play around.
Want to point out, too, that a big item just now purchased, Audi grabbing that Righteous Glory off the back of the gold that they got from the kill onto Kira, as well as the turret, means the engage power on this champion is going to be there, Vedius. One of the traditional exploits that you could use to beat Maokai is stay at a range, because Twisted Advance, it's point and click, yes, but the range is short.
It is.
It's not that short when he runs at you 2,000 miles an hour.
That's true.
And then points and clicks.
It's like a tree in a hurricane. I mean, it's going to be difficult to dodge, man.
Exactly, Vedius. Stayhost now farming up in the bottom lane, trying to get as much gold onto this Camille as he can. He has to stay relevant against that Jax in the 1 versus 1. If Lyon manages to get Jural to the point where he just scares Stayhost away and that's not even competitive, things would be disastrous. Audi popping the Righteous Glory, wanting to go in here onto the Gambit squad. Edward utilizing the ultimate, trying to make his way onto Staya, instead going to be forced to retreat, locked up and beaten down. Kira trying to use the ulti there on the Ryze, but it's not going to find any success thus far. Lyon get themselves 1 kill and continue to pressure forward.
Very quick TP coming in from Jural, but I don't know if the fight is over just yet. You can see Stagers, he's hanging off onto the side. Lyon, they want to keep the push going.
Nature's Grasp coming in, more damage coming out from Staya, who's going to be stunned up. Hextech ultimatum issued, but Stayhost cannot quite find the damage onto his target. He's going to be traded away for Audi. 1 for 1 underneath the turret. Edward's still dead, going to be respawning in just a moment. Shock Blast coming out through the acceleration gate to disengage. Jural wanting to greet out for a couple of chickens here. Gets his dinner and gets out.
Bit of disrespect, I feel, being shown from Lyon there, because if Stagers was not around, that play could have worked out beautifully, but they were not really respecting the fact that Stagehost could just come out from the brush. He still had his TP up. He was ready to go for the counter engage. And that's where things fell apart because Seiya, he was the one that initially took the tower aggro. He was the one that was forced to retreat almost immediately. And Lyon's dive suddenly shifted into, oh, no, we have to protect our mid laner. So the people that were stuck under the tower were then left, abandoned. They didn't have the support from their team, allowing Gambit to get this turnaround kill and alleviating the pressure onto this tier 2 tower. So Gambit, they punished the over-eagerness of Lyon as they try to push it down there.
Lyon continuing to build this lead as time presses forward. Vedius almost 5,000 gold up, 24 minutes is an impressive lead to have. And it's going to be up to them to push the tempo of this game even further. Lyon is in the driver's seat. They have been for the almost entirety of this game.
Yep.
And Gambit will need to constantly keep eyes open, looking for any opportunity to punish a mistake from Lyon, to utilize those playmaking talents that everyone on this team has to maybe catch someone out, maybe take advantage.
Well, Gambit, their primary vision has been set up towards the top half of the map. Their eyes are on this Baron. And given that Lyon have focused, ooh, ulti.
Ulti not finding anyone. Audi going to be disengaging that one nicely. Edward nearly taking down the explosive charge, almost sealing his fate. They heal to keep him alive. Maokai Ultimate coming in, looking to chase these guys down. Lyon does not want to run in any further because they are 4 versus 5, but Giral is pushing towards that base.
Oh.
Nice shot! Seiya dialed that one in to find the kill onto Edward. Beautifully placed. That's going to make the fight go the way of Lyon despite the 4 versus 5 nature of things. And as Stagehost takes his position back bottom to stop Giral, the rest of Lyon moves up to the top side to claim the tier.
And look at how very quickly they've translated their vision too. They were originally setting up for that dragon, but after a team fight in mid that goes in their favor, they've moved all their vision up through the top side of the jungle, and now their eyes are on the Baron. With Diamond Proc still alive, it could be a risky play to make, but he's getting zoned away by White Lotus. Lyon just keep finding these successful fights. They're utilizing this split push in Giral, and I'm just so impressed with how regularly they're able to turn these fights in their favor, even though they only have 4 members, demonstrating once again the flame or the raw talent potential that is on this lineup for Lyon.
Giral now 2 levels up over PvP Stagehost. He's got himself a 2,000 gold advantage to go with it. He's got a red buff. This Jax is absolutely disgusting at this point in time. Stagehost' Camille stands really no chance in the 1 versus 1 situation. You can see they're bringing Kira down now to try to help him maybe bait the Jax into a deceptive 1v2. It will not happen. Giral says, wait, if this guy's not completely running away from me, something has to be wrong. So he backs himself away.
And, you know, we got to go back to the draft a little bit, Flowers, because I was concerned for Lyon. I was like, they're running a 1-3-1. They have no real way to engage. Gambit seemed to have this great team fight scaling comp with a bunch of playmakers, which very much fits to their style. But Lyon, after they found that great early gank in the bottom lane, once they got White Lotus and Genthix ahead, they could just leave them. And they were like, oh, now we can't win 2v2 bot anymore. Even though we have the Zyra Khan combo, it just cannot compete with the slight advantage that this Lyon bot lane was able to accrue. And that meant the Audi was just keeping Seiya alive. All these little skirmishes that Stagehost and Diamond Procs tried to force in mid were always turned around in the favor of Lyon. Either through a great TP from Giral, Audi showing up at just the right time. Lyon have just reacted extremely well to all of the plays that Gambit have attempted to make, and they've been able to shut them down consistently throughout the year of the game that has now translated into this very healthy 7,500 gold.
Lyon's been a lot of fun to watch this game. They were a lot of fun to watch in game number 1 as well. This is a team that clearly did their homework coming into Worlds 2017. They knew what they had to do coming into this game to win. And like you were talking about, worried a little bit about this team's engage potential if they can start things off on their own terms. Audi has been doing a great job at finding angles and finding ways to get on top of targets, utilize the Nature's Grasp effectively. A lot of people have made jokes, especially when Maokai was first reworked, about how, you know, you can win the game, and by the time you get in queue for the next one, Maokai's ult will actually have reached his target. But he's been doing a fantastic job at setting those up early and getting them into position by the time the rest of the team is there in order to make those plays happen, like what you saw in top lane when they caught Kira out.
Yeah, completely agree. And now you might be wondering, like, why aren't Lyon pressuring the Baron more? They have the 1-3-1 comp. They actually don't need to. their pressure comes from just playing these side lanes and forcing Gambit to split up, because Seiya has a level advantage, an item advantage, every kind of advantage over Kira, and Jarol, we've seen multiple times now how much stronger he is than Stayho. So they just have to keep playing this 1-3-1. They just have to push out top, push out bot, and wait for Gambit to try and group and force a fight, or they will just eventually win these side lanes. But Lyon, the thing that's stopping them is their deep vision. They're not following up the pressure with wards in the enemy jungle, so that's forcing both Seiya and Jarol to play a little bit more defensively because they don't really know where the enemy is.
That singular shock blast nearly killed half of Edward's health bar. And then the To The Skies afterwards will nearly finish him off, as Diamond Proc's now going to be caught out. Taking down the enemy jungler could be the green light they need for Baron. And the flash is too little, too late. White Lotus grabs the kill, and that means Gambit now finds themselves in seriously dire straits. Jarol continuing to push up underneath the enemy turret there in the bottom lane as well. Baron going to be taken down rather rapidly, already to 50% HP by White Lotus, Genthix, and Audi together as a trio. Seiya is not even required. Gambit has no way to resist this, and Baron will go over to Lyon Gaming 30 minutes in.
And Diamond Prox, he wanted to prove himself on the international stage. He tries to go top lane to help his mid and support out, but then he ends up being the one that gets caught out. He's the one that loses his life, and he gives the Baron over to Lyon, who are now just running it through the base of Gambit.
Where's the team? Kira is bottom, Stayhos is dealing with Jarol. Meanwhile, the door is just being smashed open, and Lyon Gaming will take the inhibitor not even 30 seconds after grabbing the Baron for themselves. What a momentum play from these guys. Now you've got Jarol on the bottom side. We can rotate down here if we need to, they're saying. We can go into the top side. We can do 1-4. We can do 5-0. It doesn't matter. This team is in an awesome spot to seal this game.
Lyon, after their Game 1 performance versus WE, they were close to victory. A lot of their fights look good, but again, they didn't really translate that into a lot of objectives. Coming into Game 2, they seem like a much more even team with Gambit, but they find all these great early game leads, and they're finding much more control over the map. Sure, their vision could still do with a little bit of work. They're not properly using it with the pressure that they gain, but the one thing that you can say is that they are always ready for whatever their opposition tries to do, and they react so effectively to quickly shut it down.
And speaking of readiness and reactions, it's a criticism of the current Gambit esports squad that they sometimes appear disorganized because the entire team has so many different playmakers, and you have so many different heads of this Hydra essentially wanting to find a different opportunity. And that's sort of what we saw after the Baron was grabbed by the side of Lyon. You saw Kira going bottom saying, oh, we're going to collapse on Jarol, we're going to get this guy, while the rest of the team is saying, no, 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 we should probably, you know, save our base.
Well, now it's a team
didn't work out, and now Jarol is going to be collapsed on by 5 members. They will find the kill onto him, but they traded away for the tier 3 turret as well as inhibitor number 2. That's still a good trade for Lyon.
Yeah, they're more than happy to give away their top laner. Jarol, he still has a healthy KDA. It's not the end of the world for him to die. Sure, he will lose the Baron, but now you can just group as a 5-man, sit in the bottom lane, have Jarol maybe even push mid to just empower or just drag the minions rather into the base. But Lyon have everything that they could possibly want right now, and even though Gambit are able to get themselves one small thing back, they have not been able to keep up with Lyon, who just seem to have answers to every kind of play they try to make.
Gambit trying to push up the mid lane now, realizing they've got 15 seconds before Jarol is back alive. However, Jarol has TP when he is back alive, so you cannot put yourself in too precarious of a spot here if you are Gambit. You can see a couple of wards off there in the jungle on the side of Lyon, so if that collapse is given to them as an opportunity, they could always take that. But now they're going to be sending everybody into that bottom lane. There's one inhibitor left standing, and that is where Lyon's attention will go.
That is what they're looking for. White Lotus, he is primed and ready to go. 3.5 items completed with the QSS to boot. Let's see how Lyon make this fight happen.
Gambit going to be the ones making it happen. Instead, Edward looking to jump in with a nice initiation, but he's going to be killed immediately. Genthix backing himself away. White Lotus on a rampage as Stayhos retreats. Jarol into the back lines, blasting, barely going to be kept alive. Seiya wants to change that. Jarol jumping in as well, and that is your clean ace for Lyon Gaming.
The gold lead is too big. Lyon are too strong. They bite down hard onto Gambit Gaming, and they're looking to get their first win at the World Championship of 2017.
Lyon makes their statement here against Gambit. They looked good in game number 1. They looked great here in game number 3, 14-2. That's how you win a game of League of Legends.
Beautiful game coming out from Lyon. We talked a lot about how strong they looked in game 1, and they translated that so easily into their second game of the day. They took a commanding early lead against Gambit, and they not once let it go.
That was just a phenomenal showing from every one player on Lyon together. Everybody was doing their job. The final score for Genthix that game, 0-0 and 12 on the Braum. The actual support dream score. No kill secures, no deaths, all supports, doing all that work for the team. Both carries, by the way, I made a point of saying in game number 1, look at Seiya, look at White Lotus, neither one of them died. Neither one of them died ever until that final team fight where WE won the game. And in this game where they won, Seiya and White Lotus both no deaths. These carries are very good at staying alive and preventing a mispositioning that could otherwise get them in a bad spot.
I think you could have just ended it with, these carries are very good. Like, these guys have been playing phenomenally. They did a great job against Team WE, and they did another great job here. But you also have to look at Gambit, because at the very start of this, what you said was, these games really matter. And when you think about these two teams, Gambit and Lyon, you would imagine, based on expectations, that they're going to be the ones fighting for that second seed to try and make it out of groups. And now that Lyon have come out the gate swinging and gotten that first advantage, the pressure's on Gambit to get some kind of surprise upset against Team WE.
Well, now that Lyon have found their first win, and to break down on exactly how that win happened, we're going to send things over to the analysts.
Thank you, Captain Flowers. Just have to say, once again, mechanical plays coming in from Lyon Gaming are absolutely amazing. But even more impressive is the fact that this wasn't even in the early game like we saw in the match versus WE. They were smashing it pretty much from the start.
Yeah, and this is a lot closer to their domestic style that they are kind of more known for. They pick really lane-dominant stuff, and they try their hardest to destroy you as quickly as they can. This was the team that, going into MSI, had like a 4,000 gold lead on average at 15 minutes into the game.
Yeah, and the fact that they were, you know, once they got it to MSI, it was Gigabyte Marines in the same group, which makes you really excited for what's going to be here in the future for Lyon, because I'm becoming a fan of them after these last 2 games. If they make it out of this group second, they could be playing a #1 seed like Hong Kong Attitude potentially, right? They actually stand a pretty good chance if they keep this form up to actually make it to the group stage, depending on draws and stuff.
Looking really good. And one player I want to highlight in the early game was Adi coming in the jungle. Actually, on that Maokai, we had heard that he might be struggling to make an impact in the tank meta. He might not be able to find kind of the same footing he has in the past. Did find the footing on Lee Sin, and now in this game on the Maokai as well.
Yeah, it's a really interesting draft just because there's so many flex picks going on here. You have the Maokai taken right away, and you think, okay, that's cool. Then the Jace comes in, and you say, oh, that's probably going to go top Maokai jungle. That makes sense. And then the last pick, Jax, you're like, okay, we're going all over the place now.
Yeah, Lyon actually kind of changed their draft up to have those dominant lanes, so they were able to have a good mid matchup and a good top lane matchup for themselves, and able to play almost a stylistically identical composition, just with a little bit more to leverage in the early game.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing, is both teams kind of have this more 1-3-1. We want to skirmish, someone gets big, and we split them off, and then hopefully they carry the game. But like you said, Lyon having the counter pick advantage on red side and that flex pick advantage, finally being able to get the lane steps that are going to let them snowball this game.
Also, they had an outplay advantage, too.
Let's be clear, the Jax coming in from Giral was absolutely insane. We can look at some of his early plays coming in, because realistically, this advantage was made so much bigger by this man's individual performance.
Great decision to step into Diamond there, get that stun off so it's a little bit harder to chain CC. He's able to flash later and get his jump back up, able to survive. And then when he has the chance to go advantage after PvP Sos had blown his flash in the mid lane, he's able to get his own kills back in his favor.
Yeah, capitalizing off of mistakes there from Gambit Esports, but absolutely running away with the game off of that, saying he has no fear that Camille just messed that up, and he's able to draw so much pressure, so much attention.
Yeah, you know, Jax in the mid lane, you think that's a pretty easy kill usually, but as people come in, they're able to get into support. He times his abilities correctly, making sure he stays safe.
I swear that his Jax E has more range than my Jax E. That is just insane.
Every time.
Typical complaint.
It just looks so clean coming in from him, and this is just so interesting too, because it's such a different style. Game 1 was so slow. They're showing us this now. And do you think this is the face of Lyon we're just going to see from now on? Is this incredibly dominant style?
Yeah, I really wish this is what we actually had seen out of Game 1 versus WE, because you saw with that lead, they were able to cleanly snowball basically no problems in that gold draft there. And it's the kind of thing where they had their red side game already versus WE. I would have loved to have seen a similar strategy then. Go as aggressive as you play in your own region and bring it to China. Don't play scared. And it felt like they played potentially a little bit more of the game of their opponent opponents where they took a more late game focus with that Kog'Maw.
Yeah, I think what they ended up doing against WE, late game focus for them, but also I feel like they kind of put their top laner draw on a tank and made it so they had some insurance because they were going to play Lee Sin jungle. If you play a tank jungle and you give yourself a split pusher like they did, then you can open it up and have diversification and have your your kind of standard tanks in a composition and not just a mono tank comp.
And the one thing we're still looking for them is more BM because these guys are known for
They had a little.
Marcy, you love this BM so much.
They had a little bit of it, but I need to see more just because when you watch their finals in their region, like they would be down gold, just still spamming away. I mean, it's what they are. They're this aggressive, lane dominant, very confident team.
It did bite them a little bit when they got caught out. But this game, there was a little bit of Tristana laughing. I do think that they brought some confidence with them, and to go up against a team like WE that people are favoring to make it out of the group and saying that they could even go far potentially afterwards, I feel like they have a bit of swagger, and that's what I like seeing from this team.
I like it too, but to round this out, we've been praising Lyon a lot. I want to look a little bit at Gambit. Just one final statement. What needs to change for Gambit if they want to find wins, because it's already a rough start?
It just felt like a lot of small individual things went wrong. A number of engages out of Edward came up a little bit short. The nerfs to Rakan maybe being an influence there. They had a good chain CC combo on Sia in the mid lane, just missing a little bit of damage to finish him off. Maybe they could have optimized that a little better. There were a lot of small mistakes that kind of led to that deficit.
Yeah, I think the way I kind of encapsulate this game for Gambit Esports is impatience. I felt like they had a good kind of early skirmish bottom lane. Then everybody's playing aggressive, and Audi got some really kind of obvious, really easy ganks off on Maokai, where he's like, oh, they're playing really aggressive. I can just walk up W in here and start snowballing. He had really high kill participation in the first 5 kills of the game. He was involved in 4 of them. And so they were allowing this Maokai to just walk up instead of playing it slowly, getting vision control, and then going from there.
Definitely was a good look for them overall on the side of Lyon to punish those mistakes coming from Gambit, see what they can do to improve the team as we look towards their games later in the day. But we're going to step away. When we return, we've got teams looking to back up their Twitter banter in Direwolves versus Cloud9. Meet us back here after the break. Personally, I want to see how it unfolds.
Who is this guy?